Welcome to Getting to Know You. Today, I want to share that this whole idea was Betty Ozan's, who said everybody here had interesting stories, and to build up on the community, we would share people's stories. And then Pamela Penn volunteered to transcribe these interviews, so there will be copies of them as well as interviews. And so today we have one of my favorite people, Rachel Schreier, and I just am so excited to talk with you today. And look how pretty she matches the pictures. I think she color coordinated it. So, first of all, there's so much of your life that's interesting. Would you like to start out with something? You just go where you'd like to go.
Well, I wouldn't even know where to start because it is long.
Well, why don't you start by where you were born and brothers and sisters and the beginning.
Only child, born in Philadelphia.
Take the mic.
Very dull. And Philadelphia is very dull. And we never actually lived there. I traveled a lot with my parents. My father was a travel salesman, and we traveled with him until I was 5. And then we moved to California, and my life actually began.
Very good. And we have something in common. We were both only children. Did you like that?
I never thought about it that much. I mean, that's what it was. And that was it.
Uh-huh.
So it would have been nice to have had some other kids around, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But, and oddly enough, my best friend, who was a fella that I sort of grew up with, was also an only child.
Uh-huh.
So it was kind of nice. It
Right.
was, yeah. He was a year older than me. We grew up together, sort of.
Uh-huh. Well, I had a cousin 6 months older than I was, and she was an only child too. So we would spend time sitting in the bathtub at my grandma's house, talking and talking and talking, and people would have to knock on the door so they could use the bathroom because we could spend the whole afternoon there.
That's fun.
Yes, so you had an older male friend,
Yes.
and I had an
We
older.
did not spend time in the bathroom.
That's a good thing.
Okay.
I believe there's something special about your age.
I'm old. I'm old. I'm 98 at this point. I was just had a birthday. I was 98. And that's old.
That's
It really
wise.
is.
That's wise.
It's really just old. I don't think I got any wiser. I think slower. So
Uh-huh. When you think of each of those decades, do you know which one you like the best? 1 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50.
the 70s,
70s? And what made those special?
where we lived. Where we lived.
And tell us about that.
We lived in San Diego, George and I.
Uh-huh.
And he was retired, and we had a really nice house and had really nice friends and belonged to a really interesting organization, Democratic, of course, truthfully. And it was good. It was good. It was a good way to, 16 years we lived there, and that was really nice. It was really nice.
I believe I heard that you also were a marcher.
Yes.
A marcher? Do you want to tell us what you marched for?
Mostly, well, let's see. I marched in San Francisco when they had the San Francisco, the first march, and then we marched in the second march, and that was in 1950 something. Yeah, I marched a lot whenever I could for whatever the issue was at the moment. I marched for some prisoners that I didn't think should be prisoners. I marched against the war in Vietnam, naturally, and I marched for bus transportation when we lived in Irvine. We didn't have bus transportation. Whatever the reason was at the moment, I marched. I really did.
Did you think marching at that time was safer than it is today, or was it about the same?
Oh, no. Yes, I think it was safer. I would still march if I could. I really would. I don't think they'd want me to, but I certainly would in a wheelchair. That would look ridiculous. But yeah, I'm not sure how safe it is now. I'm really not. Life is not quite the same. It was different. It was different.
Did you and George march together?
Oh yes, whenever possible. Oh yes, unless he was at work, then I'd march on my own.
Uh-huh. So you both were marchers.
Oh yes. Yes.
Very good. Very good. You shared lots of things together with
Oh
George,
yes.
didn't you?
Oh yes.
Sounds like that was a very special relationship.
It lasted a long time.
How long?
69 and a half years.
That's pretty long.
It was nice. It was really nice. Yeah, we were lucky.
Uh-huh. You don't think you had anything to do with it?
No, I think life was just very good to us. Really.
Uh-huh. I also know you took a lot of trips to Israel, right?
Oh, lots of them.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, we went every year, George and I, because my son moved there, got married there, and had 4 children there. So those were our grandchildren, because my other children didn't have children. So the only grandchildren that I had lived in Israel. So we went back and forth every year. That's how we spent his vacation, was going to Israel. So, but it was great. We got to know our grandchildren. They got to know us well enough to where when they were old enough, they came to California and stayed with us for the summer.
Oh, what fun.
Every year. Yeah. Yeah, we got to know them pretty well. Yeah.
And what are those special grandchildren doing today?
They're all living in Israel. They are parents themselves, so I'm a great grandmother. And they're nice people. They're nice people. They're good kids. I like them. Which is nice.
Uh-huh. That's right.
It's convenient.
And do I recall that when you were in Israel, you bought a home there? Did you have a home there?
No.
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 You would just go visit?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
No, we never had a home.
Uh-huh. And when your grandchildren would come and visit, were you ever concerned about whether they'd get into trouble or they were just good kids?
No, they always found neighbor children to play with,
Uh-huh.
and it worked out fine. And every year before they came, depending on what age they were, we'd go shopping, like for doll carriages and bicycles. And as they got older, the toys got older. It was fun. I mean, we were lucky. It was great. Yeah.
What did they call you? Were you Grandma, Bubba? Who were you?
Nana.
Nana. Mm-hmm. And there's also a story to your name, I think.
What?
There's also a story to your
Oh,
name.
yeah. I didn't like Ruth. Ruth is what they gave me, and I didn't like Ruth at all. I think I really didn't even like her. I just didn't like Ruth. And then all of a sudden in my 60s, I was at a meeting, and somebody asked me and it was a meeting in Yiddish, the Jewish language, and we were all giving our Jewish names, and I gave my Jewish name, which is Rachel, which translates to either Ruth or Rachel, And the man sitting next to me said, "Oh, that was my sister's name, Rachel." And I said, "Yes, that's my name, Rachel." And from then on, I was Rachel. That was kind of fun.
Yes.
I didn't like Ruth.
Uh-huh.
I really didn't.
So did you legally change things?
No.
Or
No.
you just decided and that was
Yeah.
it?
And most of my legal things are still, legally I'm still Ruth.
Uh-huh.
But socially, as much as possible, I'm Rachel.
Mm-hmm. I really like that name.
I do too.
Mm-hmm. It's a pretty one. And so Rachel is the name.
Yes,
Does anybody call you Ruth now?
my daughters.
Your daughters? They don't know you have a new name?
They prefer Ruth. I'm Ruth to them. I was for many years, and it stuck.
Okay. And you weren't Mom?
I'm in between Ruth and Mom. It depends on the occasion, or whether I'm being given an argument, or whether I'm being treated nicely. It just depends.
Mm-hmm.
I'm either Ruth or Mom.
Is Ruth a more official name?
I don't know. The girls just call me Ruth.
Uh-huh.
The boys call me Mom.
Mm-hmm.
They're strange.
Do you like that word, Mom?
That's okay. Sure, it's what I am.
What did you like about being a mom?
Having the twins was the funnest. That was the funnest, having the twins. The boys were great, but the unusual thing was having twins. Nobody I knew had twins. We lived in the country in Macon, Georgia, and it was horrible, and all I really had were the twins. I mean, they were so cute, and they were very good children. I was lucky. I was really lucky. All four of them were very good. I was lucky.
You wouldn't contribute any of that to you?
No, they were just good kids.
Okay.
No, they were good kids. They really were. I was lucky.
Uh-huh.
People do have difficult children.
Yes. And they can be good parents.
Yeah, well, they were just good kids. I don't know. They were easy.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put it that way.
Were your twins identical?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yes.
And can you give us any adventures about being a twin and what it was like being a parent to twins?
Was the most fun sometimes was walking when they were still in a playpen, and they'd be sitting back to back, and each would be doing the same thing the other one was doing without the other one seeing what she was doing, because they were back to back. It was an interesting time, and I was young.
Uh-huh.
So it was a new experience for George and I to even have children,
Uh-huh.
let alone twins. It was great.
Uh-huh.
It was great. We were lucky.
I always thought I wanted to have twins too.
It was fun.
But I think there would be pretty tired times when they were little, weren't there?
As I said, we were lucky. They were very good children. They trained very early. In those days, you trained your children as early as possible, and we did, and they were great, and they were good. They were just good kids. They really were. Yeah, they were good children. I was lucky.
Do you know what they would say today about being twins?
Their worlds are separate now. One lives on the East Coast, one lives on the West Coast. They're both psychologists, practicing psychologists. They see each other quite a bit during the year. They do things together, go to theater. They meet somewhere for a couple of weeks during the year and vacation together. So that's kind of nice. But they each have their own lives.
Mm-hmm.
So that's nice.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that your grandchildren were all in Israel.
Yes.
And so your your twins did not have children.
No.
And what would they say would be unique about being twins? Or did they?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And yet they both went into psychology.
Yes. Self-defense. I really think self-defense.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, what it was that they wanted to do, they did. So,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and they're still practicing.
Uh-huh.
And the joke in the family is, when do you start practicing and actually start working? But that's an old joke. I'm sure everybody's heard it.
It sounds like they like what they do.
Oh, yes. Oh, or they wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
No, they would not do it if they didn't like it.
Uh-huh.
No.
And where did they go to school?
Well, one went to school, it depends on what school you mean.
Graduate school.
But they both went to graduate school in Massachusetts. One to Harvard and the other one to Tufts for graduate school.
Mm-hmm.
Both got their doctorates there.
It sounds like they were bright.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
And how did they go about choosing Harvard and Tufts?
Well, it sounds weird, but both of them had their choice of any of 7 universities. That they could have had one of them. And Jerry chose Harvard, and I'm not sure which one back east. Oh, Marcia was going with someone who was going to go to Cambridge. I don't remember where he was going to go, but he ended up going to Harvard. So she couldn't go to Harvard. He was brilliant as well. So she ended up at Tufts because it was a last minute sort of thing. So she had no problem getting into any university. So it worked out just, we were lucky. We were lucky. They were smart.
And then what did your sons choose to do in Israel?
Let's see. Dan graduated from Berkeley and moved to Israel. And David graduated from UCLA and is now a, I don't know, graphic artist. It's the best way I could describe it. And he does that because he enjoys it. And Dan lives in Israel with his wife and his 4 children and his now 8 grandchildren. I think there's a 9th. I meant to.
And what's it like to be?
I meant on the way.
And what's it like to be a great grandmother?
Well, I'm not there a lot, but when I am, it's fun, excepting I don't speak Hebrew. And the little ones don't speak English. The other ones do. My grandchildren all speak English, and very well. So all of their friends speak English too. I mean, they sort of learned it by the 4th grade, I think it is. So that's never been a problem. And they've always visited a lot, or I've been there a lot. So I've watched them grow up. The little ones, not so much.
What has it been as you've observed your sons living in Israel? What's your sense of like family and connections? And you were fortunate enough to go every year, but otherwise, where was the family?
We watched Israel sort of change a lot. Just very interesting, just different from the way we live, a lot different. They lived in the country, so their life was different. And they had different means of income at different times in their lives, the 2 of them. And of course they had the children right away, and that made life interesting for us. With somebody really to visit, watch them grow. So it was interesting.
As you think about your twins, they're on different sides of the country. When you think about your sons in Israel, how do they live? Are they close or separate? What?
They talk a lot on the phone. David lives in Spain most of the year. Part of the year lives in Los Angeles. He has a house there. But he lives in Spain a lot. Or he travels a lot. He has an interesting life. He pretty much does what he wants to do. And that's David. I don't know if I said Dan or David. That's David. But Dan lives in Israel, and he has his wife and his 4 children, and is now his multitude of grandchildren, his grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. We've become a very large family.
From being an only to being a large family.
Yes, yes.
What
That's
was
interesting.
What's that been like?
Well, it's a sort of thing that just sort of happens. I mean, my kids were spread apart a lot. The twins were in college when the baby was born. So there was a big span with just one in the middle. So I've always had a child growing up, which was always fun. It was nice. It was nice.
So you always had different, like parent conferences and so on.
Oh yes, I was
big
always
wide
busy
gap.
at PTA. Always, yes. PTA was part of my life. Yes. For many years. For many years. I remember once meeting somebody when I was going to PTA for the youngest, and the girl sitting next to me was telling me about her child. And she was at least 25. And I was at least 50-something. It was an interesting conversation. It was very unusual.
Would you say any age group was more like favorite than another?
No, because each one was at a different time of my life. So I was different with each child. I'm not sure that made it easier for them, but each one was easier for me. I mean, the girls were like 7 when Dan was born, and then the girls were in college when David was born. So I had them spread out. They were fun. Nice kids.
When we think about children, we often think parents have a huge influence on children, when in fact today they're saying peers have a lot to do with who a child is. For example, when I was an only child and it was during the Cold War, everybody was good. There was no room not to be good. And today I think of all the choices and options that children have, it would be very hard to, I think, raise a child today with so many choices, and how to understand and keep up. Every 5 years is a new generation, and probably even less now because of technology and so on.
Right, it's fast. It's fast.
But you had a couple of generations with your children.
But I had time. I had time to sort of enjoy each one. At least I think I did. Yeah. They became adults too soon for me. They did. All of them. Yeah.
When you think of raising your twins, was it important that they were different, or did you two do like look-alike dresses? What did you do with identical
At
twins?
that time, I looked alike. To the point when they were little that when I hung in those days I had scrubbing, washing, machine. And I hung the clothes, 2 petticoats, 2 dresses. I did everything in twins. I did. It was almost a craziness, but it was fun. I mean, it was part of having twins, was the pleasure of putting things together. It was fun. They were easy children. I was lucky.
What did you do to keep them apart? Like, how did you tell?
I
this
don't
one
know.
from
I
that
just
one?
knew by the time they were 5 months old, I knew who was who. I mean, there just wasn't any question in my mind anymore. George called them the girls, but to me, they were who they were supposed to be. But they were interesting people, so it was easy.
It was, well, for your first, to have a set of twins.
I didn't know any better. That was the way life was.
But there were no twins
No,
on either side.
no nephews, no nieces, no nothing.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was a great experience. Yeah, it really was.
When you look at, you said the 70s were your best decade, or you enjoyed it the most. What would George say, do you know?
What was what?
Would George say the same thing?
I think it was a good period for both of us. We were relaxed. We were able to participate in politics and the things we wanted to. And we were with a very interesting group of people in San Diego. Really interesting people. Like one of them had been the designer of the plane of the I forget what to call it, but the planes that did the bombing of the, you know, they were interesting retired people, and they were fun to be with, and everybody had to give a talk periodically, and so you learned about them and about their lives, and that was fun. It was a great group of people, and we met every month, and it was great.
And what did George do as a career?
Oh, he was a purchasing agent in a very large plumbing concern, wholesale plumbing supplies. And he just kept getting better at it, and whatever he did, he got better at it all the time. He was just very competent, very capable man, very nice person, really nice. I was lucky.
You wouldn't say you had good taste?
Oh, sure, I picked him. He didn't pick me. Of course. Oh, sure. He had no say in the matter at all. No. That was me. No.
And when you think of the qualities you were looking for, what were they?
A good-looking man and get married. Truth. I had boyfriends, but I liked him the most, and I thought I asked him to marry me enough times so he finally did. Yeah.
And the mama and papas all agreed?
Oh yes. His mother was not enthused about me because when she met me, the first thing that he told her was that we were living in Washington, D.C., and we went to visit his family in New Jersey, and that's how I met them. And the first thing that I think I said to her was that we were going to move to California when George and I got married. That was before we were formally engaged. And so she was not very happy about living in New Jersey and her son moving to California. That was not thrilling, but she was a very kind, very sweet lady, so she forgave me. Now, we got along fine, primarily because she lived in New Jersey and I lived in California.
And did he have brothers and sisters?
Yes, yes. George had one sister and 4 brothers. So it was a good big family. They were really nice people. They really were. Some of them came and lived in California for a while, and then went back to wherever it was they came from. So we got to know all of them really well as adults. It was nice.
So George went to California, but his siblings also went. So Mama had to be upset about that, or was used to it by then?
Well, there was always a couple still living in New Jersey. There were always some grandchildren still living in New Jersey. So home was still New Jersey for everybody, for holidays, for funerals, for Jersey City was home. That was nice.
Of George's family, did any of them live in Israel?
No.
So it was unique for your sons to
Yes.
live there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually a cousin moved there, but that I never got to know them really well. But Dan did. They got to be good friends.
You have a very international family, don't you?
Yes. Very boring.
Oh, I don't think so.
Very dull.
Really?
Isn't it? I mean,
I don't think so.
yeah.
Living in Spain, living in LA, living in Israel.
Yeah. I lucked out, I guess.
Did you like to travel?
Yeah, I didn't mind moving around.
Mm-hmm. Would you have liked to live in Israel?
There was a time that, had we been able to, George and I would have moved there, yes. A period of time. Whether we would have liked it had we done it, I don't know. But there was a time we thought we might do it.
And how old were you at that time?
I think we were probably in our 30s. Maybe late 30s. But it didn't last long.
And you thought your mother-in-law wasn't pleased that you moved to LA. What about going to Israel?
Well, her attitude probably would have been even more forgiving, because that she always had a soft place in her heart for Israel. So, I don't think she'd have been thrilled, because the trip would have been really hard on her. But she would have visited. Yeah, we would have, but we didn't do it, and I'm glad we didn't.
That's interesting. You're saying you're glad you didn't.
No.
How do you explain that?
Because I ended up having a very comfortable life, what I would consider a very good life. I ended up here, after all. What could be any better than Westminster Village? And I'm saying that seriously. I've been here almost 20 years, so it has to have been livable. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't stay where I wasn't comfortable. I just wouldn't. We never did. Oh, never thought about that.
And if you think back, I've heard that there were two couples here that were very close, and their spouses had the same names. And is that true?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I think I'm talking about our librarian.
Oh,
And her
yeah.
husband.
Oh, yeah.
Tell about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, Marilyn and, of course. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just automatic. She lives next door. I mean, no, Marilyn's family. No.
But that's pretty unusual, because all four of you liked each other,
Yes.
spent time together,
Yes.
lived close,
Yes.
and have been as a support to each other.
Yes. Both the fellows had Parkinson's. both became difficult and impossible, and we hated both of them at one time. But we managed. When things got rough, we'd go out and she'd come next door and I'd meet her in the hall and we'd commiserate. Made life easier. She's, you know Marilyn, unusual lady. Yeah.
I think there were 4 unusual people with that couple. You and George and
Oh,
Marilyn and her husband.
Yeah,
Mhm.
nice people. Yeah, we were nice people.
How long have the 2 of you been friends?
I think we became friends a year after they moved here, and she's been here now 18 years, I think it is. A year less than we. So at first they didn't live next door. They lived further away. We actually had to go to visit them, you know, and make a trip out of it or plan dinner. And then when they moved next door, it was easier because the fellas, we could leave the 2 men to play whatever games they played, and they were company for each other, which was good for us. You know, so it worked out. Things have a way of life kind of compensates for what you don't have. I don't know. Anyway, enough of that.
It sounds like talking about your friends in California, which were very different. And then here, you've had many rich friendships.
Yeah, more in California than here.
When we first moved in for the first year or 2, we traveled back and forth to San Diego a lot. We'd go for weekends. We'd pack the dogs in the car and go for the weekend. And we had a favorite motel we stayed at. So we went back and forth at least 4 times a year the first couple of years. And then it eased off. Got more difficult. We couldn't do it all in one day. We had to stop at a motel overnight, you know. So we didn't go as often anymore. It was a trip.
That's very dull.
Did you miss the water when you moved here?
No.
So you're very adaptable. You could have lived in Israel. You have children all
I
over the
think
world.
everybody in those days was adaptable. Everybody I knew was. All my friends, one of my friends had a pharmacy. She didn't work at all. I worked in his pharmacy, which is how I knew he had a pharmacy. No, we were friends before that. And another friend, I mean, everybody was different. My girlfriend B was a phenomenal woman. They were nice ladies, and their families were great. And one friend didn't necessarily like to be around when the other friend was around. It was interesting. They'd watch and see whose car was there. Never figured that one out. But anyway, they were both my best friends. You know, it was fun. And they celebrated all the holidays together. We all did. Or weddings, or childbirth, or any of that. We were always together. But if they had a choice, they kept going.
You know, one of the things, being an only child, and you being an only child, others view us very differently than we view ourselves. And there's a lot of research on only children. And one of the things they say is that only children make really good friends. They have a best friend because only children always think there's enough to go around. You don't have to worry that I need the bike. No, you're wanting the bike.
Marilyn's an
generous.
only child.
I know. And so.
And my girlfriend B was an only child.
But they say having an only child as a friend is a good thing.
Yeah, they were great. They were really, I was very lucky.
I really was. Wow. And everybody was always older than me. It was interesting. Yeah.
I talk too much.
That's what you're supposed to do in these interviews.
Ugh.
I don't think so. When you think back, is there anything you would wish you would have shared with us that you haven't yet?
No. No. I think we were lucky to have picked Westminster. It's interesting because we knew no one in Arizona. No one at all. We came here for a weekend with the dogs to look at places that we heard of. We saw Westminster. We liked it. For us, it was a little different in that we were used to being with a lot of other Jewish people and young people like ourselves, not religious, but, and when we came here, there were, I think, only 10 other Jewish people in all of Westminster. So that was a little different than our lives in California. But it worked out fine. Everybody was very nice. Everybody here has always been. We were lucky. We really were. We were lucky.
Well, I super appreciate your willingness to share those parts of your life.
Boring.
No, it was not. And Krista says it wasn't boring too.
You're kidding.
So anyway, thank you very, very much. And I've enjoyed getting to know you even more. And you've always been a favorite person of
Thank
mine.
you, and I like you too. You knew that.
I knew that, yes. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.